sort of paying attention to me, and he listened to it, and then he goes, "Wow, that's depressing." To which I said, "Shut up." And then I went back to my office and I started all over again. Just like delete, start over. Needless to say, this is a very different speech, at least I hope so. But that's okay, you know, everyone needs to vent every now and again, even if it is 5 pages single space, behind Roman 12-point font. Hello, thank you for coming here today, not only to support Stephen and his peers in putting on this project, TEDxYouth Chandler, but thank you for supporting education, your education. I think that what you are accomplishing here, being in my eyes, promoting educational discourse, is a beautiful thing. I know I feel inspired. Heck, I wish I had had a math teacher like Mrs. Rennell. Sapaki, he inspires me from afar, and just from what I hear from you guys. And I created a binder called "My Bender is Better Than Your Binder." So I feel absolutely just overjoyed in being here. We were talking outside in the hallways, and Ann Bender and I were talking about, you know, how amazing this is that you put this on, but it's only the first step, and you should really consider you being the presenters and inviting us to come listen to you, because the value in creativity, the value of creativity in education, it's you. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Angelika first. I am a proud public school educator. This is my 15th year in the Chandler Unified School District and my 5th year here at Chandler High School. And I'm not going anywhere. I love it here. I'm gonna die here. I always joke with my French students and I say I'm gonna be the little French teacher that's like, "Conjugué le verbe." You know, hopefully they'll just roll me over, put it down, you know, stick it on me. It is also important to me to note that I am the product of a public school education. I attended Papago Elementary School, Creighton Middle School, and I am a graduate of South Mountain High School, class of 1995. And all of those were schools that were rooted in neighborhoods, forgotten neighborhoods, inhabited by people whose poverty level and race rendered them practically invisible. I grew up on 34th Street in McDowell. I am the third child of Maria Antonia Vizcaíno de Zapata first and Klaus first. They are both immigrants from Mexico and Germany, respectively. And I used to love analyzing the reactions of adults when they heard where I attended school. Ooh, they would say, you know, "I heard that place is dangerous." Is it true? And I think that Chandler High School has similar misconceptions. We like to refer to ourselves as the best kept secret, and I would wholeheartedly agree to that statement. It's difficult for people to understand how a place like Chandler High School could be an A+ school if it's located in the barrio of Chandler, Arizona. It's much easier for them to comprehend being able to buy a really good burrito down the street rather than finding signs of intelligent life in an inner city school, in an inner city high school. And this I know from experience. The next part of my talk I would like to label blind. I remember sitting in the ophthalmologist waiting room. It was my junior year in high school, and I had been suffering from frequent migraines and discovered I needed glasses. It's always your junior year, isn't it? Everything happens junior year. Mine walk in like zombies. Anyway, I was waiting to be called back when I began reading a magazine and came across an article featuring Dr. Marva Collins of Chicago, Illinois. If I can stop shaking. Oh, there we go. It was about this principal in this inner city school in Chicago who was doing incredible things with the student body. You see, they were successful despite the savage inequalities. To borrow the title from Jonathan Coles's novel, that plagued their neighborhoods and their schools. What caught my attention at this nihilistic age of 17 was a quote from her. It read, and I remember it to this day, "I will continue to let society predict, but only I can determine what I will, can, or cannot do." This is something that I believe, if memory serves me correctly, she made each and every student recite every morning after the Pledge of Allegiance. I have waited almost 20 years for this, and I thank you, Dr. Margaret Collins, for helping me commence my own personal journey to freedom. And it is a journey that I continue to this day. As many of you know, it's very difficult to grow up with stereotypes, be they positive or negative, that society imposes on us, and that if we're honest, we impose on ourselves. You see, up until then, my education was just a means to an end, because the stereotypes plaguing my culture were blinding me from seeing myself differently. I just needed enough credits to graduate from high school and thereby making me eligible to attend a junior college or university. It's not that I wasn't doing well, I was a straight A student, except for that D in physics and economics and that C in calculus, if we're to be honest tonight. I was vice president of the National Honor Society, I was in television and radio production, I had my own teen news program. Heck, I was a member of the Daughters of Descartes Club. That was before I became fluent in French and realized it was pronounced Descartes. But that's a math club for crying out loud. But I had long succumbed to the in-and-out urge fast food approach to public education and was merely counting the days to graduation, when I should have been counting the caloric value of my education. Paying homage to Carnegie. Let me tell you, I may have entered that ophthalmologist waiting room as a junior in desperate need of glasses, but I left that waiting room with more than just a prescription. Today you have listened to several presenters talk to you about the value of creativity in education. What I'm here to talk to you about is recognizing your value and contributing to a learning environment that fosters creativity amongst your peers and instructors alike through meaningful interactions. So here you go. It's going to be a little bit kind of like that candy that's sour and like kicks you and then hugs you at the end. So my students are used to it. So up here versus down there, forming a resistance against our own anti-intellectual behaviors which contribute to our miseducation. Until about a decade ago, I strongly believed that my instructors were up here and that I was down there. Despite Dr. Collins' words that got me to rethink my education as no longer a means to an end, but a means to endless new beginnings, empowered by yours truly, I still harbored many oppressive misconceptions with respect to my own intellect. Early on, through both my parents and the educational system, I learned that my teachers were up here and that I was down there. I was culturally and systematically brought up to believe that the hierarchy that existed between teacher and student was a logical one. Where else would I have learned the phrase, the sage on the stage, used previously by Mr. Root. In 1999, I received my bachelor's degree in secondary education in French with a minor in Spanish. Oddly enough, I can only recall three things I learned from my 4 years of teacher training courses, which directly contributed to my utter failure as a first-year teacher. 1, don't chew gum. 2, worship Hunter, Bloom, and Gardner. And 3, don't smile until Christmas. With the exception of worshiping Hunter, Bloom, and Gardner, numbers 1 and 3, meaning don't chew gum and don't smile until Christmas, were geared at classroom control, which is why my classroom looked like this. This is from Pink Floyd's The Wall. Awesome, awesome, awesome. However, my adherence to 1 and 3 were no doubt responsible for my utter failure as a first-year teacher, second-year teacher, and at least half of my third year of teaching. No one's counting 5 semesters of failing. To figure out that when I finally realized that gum gives you fresh breath, even if it ends up under a student desk, utilizing the brain children of Hunter, Bloom, and Gardner didn't mean I should spend 12 hours a week on my standards and objectives. I doubt that this was their intent in the first place. But rather, my time was best utilized preparing the actual documents my students would be using to help facilitate their instruction, always keeping in mind that we all learn differently, and that I needed to focus on things that were more important rather than rote memorization. Gosh dang it, I love to smile. And my students know that. I have a great smile. And I want my students to smile. They don't all have great smiles. That's gay. Because when they're smiling, they're feeling a sense of joy, and joy in learning is what it's all about. I think that's been the common thread in all of the speeches done this evening, is that finding the joy in what you're doing, the pursuit. The joy comes in the pursuit, the joy comes in the doing. The more engaged you are, the more involved you are in what you're actually studying. Over the course of my studies, I have come across many outstanding educators, each with his or her own approach to teaching. I had to unlearn what I was taught in teacher training classes in order to relearn what it should mean, not to be an obedient student teacher, but a lifelong scholar. And this new epiphany, if you will, came to me while watching Yentl. Don't hate on Babs, even if you love South Park. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the film, Yentl, played by Barbara Streisand, is about a young Jewish girl who defies tradition by debating Jewish law and theology with her father. Young Jewish girl simply didn't do that. Well, when her father dies, Yentl cuts her hair, dresses as a boy, and uses the name Anshel so that she can study at a yeshiva, a Jewish school, in order to continue studying the Talmud, a religious book reserved for the eyes of men. Anyway, there is a scene where she enters the yeshiva and the classroom, if you will. It's loud. It's incredibly loud, and it's not loud in the negative westernized sense of the word loud with respect to classrooms. It's loud in the sense of, listen to me. I have a brain. I can think for myself, and I don't agree with you because you're wrong. And I just remember seeing that scene and thinking to myself, wow, what if my classroom could look like that? Not necessarily all dressed in Orthodox Jewish clothing, but what if it looked like that? What if that energy was in there like this scene in Yentl? But I had to stop viewing myself as up here and my students as down there, as did they. The sole responsibility of getting students to engage in what they're learning cannot reside only with the educator. In the Ferrarian sense, he would hate that I just said that. Students have to free themselves from the belief that they are empty vessels to be filled by the sage on stage. It is my experience as a public school student and a public school teacher. Students view themselves as the student, not the teacher, rather than realizing that we are all knowers. That we all have something to contribute if we are going to be a true community of learners. Each and every one of us must choose to engage so that we can increase our circles of knowledge. My students hear that all the time. Thank you, Ben Peterson, Bachelor High School, for sharing your philosophy of education with me, for I have consciously chosen to adopt it. In order to have a successful learning environment, the oppressed, in this case the silenced teacher or student, must free him or herself and become an active participant in his or her own education. As we already stated, animals do not consider the world, they are immersed in it. In contrast, human beings emerge from the world, objectify it, and in so doing can understand it and transform it with their labor. Every single one of you comes to the table as a knower, as a contributor to your learning community, and the more you bring, the more tantalizing the potluck becomes. So stop being a knowledge hoarder. The next time you see a peer struggling in class, offer your assistance. The next time you yourself don't understand something, ask for help. The next time you don't agree with something you read, heard, or you yourself said, voice your disagreement. Have an opinion. Stop waiting for our permission to learn. The world is your textbook. Stop being afraid to be wrong, because at some point along the way you will be wrong. And so what? We're wrong too. On Tuesday nights, I teach English 102 at one of the community colleges. English 102 is the research paper. But I thought you were a French and Spanish teacher. I'm a woman with many skills. Anyway, the first evening we met this semester, I asked my students to write down their concerns on an index card anonymously. One of the cards read, "I am a little slow to get stuff, and I don't know if I should quit." It broke my heart. I had only gone over the syllabus. I immediately stood up and I said, I am a little slow at getting stuff too. And don't quit. We are a learning community, and together we can help each other succeed in this course. You see, I am teaching 20, 30, 40, 50-year-olds who still believe that I am up here and they are down there. So my question to you, youth of Chandler High School, youth of the world, depending on who gets to see or hear this rhetoric, my question is, are you the student on the conveyor belt of Pink Floyd's The Wall? Blind, deaf, and mute, an empty vessel awaiting your next information dump? If education is to be a subversive act, in what ways are you engaging your learning community? In what ways are you making beautiful noise? 4 years ago, our salutatorian, Matthew Mahoney, was asked by our school newspaper to describe his 4 years at Chandler High School. Matt's response was, "It was delicious." If you come into my classroom, you will see the article stapled to my bulletin board. When I read this, I thought to myself, now here's a kid who gets it. He understood the meaning behind the word scholar. This was a kid who wasn't interested in an in-and-out fast food approach to public education, but rather he understood that completing high school was more than just attaining the required numbers of credits and playing the game. Here was someone who reaped the benefits of a free public education because he chose to engage with just that, the public. Matt fully interacted with his surroundings. He transcended the up here versus down there mind frame with his labor. Matt chose to make noise, and therefore his educational experience was delicious. Recently, I was listening to President Obama speak at the Democrat National Convention. In his speech, he said that teachers need to inspire and that students need to do what they're there to do. But that isn't good enough for me. You have to inspire us too. True learning isn't fostered through control, and it certainly isn't fostered through a systematic, sanitized, inauthentic approach to teaching or learning. Master teachers and scholars recognize that teaching and learning actions that describe both teachers and students alike and simultaneously, and it is an organic experience. For these teachers and students, their classroom experience is, to use Mahonian discourse, delicious. For the rest, it's just burgers. If value is defined as the quantity or amount of something, then the value of creativity and education is dependent upon you. It always has been and will always be dependent upon you.